Welcome to another Water Trek 360. Today is part 5 of our excursion to Jardines de la Reina, Cuba.
Well, unfortunately, significant rain and wind. The lightning has died down, but this has put a crimp in diving here on day 5.
Luckily, the morning lightning and rain stopped. The tenders, due to the severe weather, were overnighted at the Anclitas base. So a delayed start with the first dive just before 8:30 a.m. Our first dive site was called Pipin. We headed to the western side of the Caballones Channel, to date the farthest west we had been. We dropped down to the reef, which was deeper than most others we had done as well, roughly 50 to 60 feet at the top. It was marked by deep channel grooves. There was a shelf ledge around 75 feet where we spent most of our time. Unless otherwise noted, all video is shot with an iPhone 14 Pro. There were some sharks, but as the previous day's first dive was dominated by shark feeding, today's was all about the Goliath Grouper. 3 of them, 2 smaller ones and the big guy, about 400 plus pounds. They were incredibly friendly. The guides referred to them as pet dogs. They liked to be stroked and touched. Again, as with the sharks and the crocodile, the guides were feeding them. In this case, they brought a few lobster tails for them. It keeps them around for the tourists. The big one was like a battleship cruising by as I tried to capture one of the largest barrel sponges I saw at the Jardines. I also spotted this fair-sized black grouper hanging on a shelf. While I did allow myself to touch the big guy's silky smooth scales, I didn't want to harass them. Give the gentle giants their space. Look how big it is next to this diver. The Atlantic Goliath Grouper can grow up to 8 feet in length and weigh in as much as 800 pounds. Truly a massive fish. Goliaths have a short annual larval period, making it very vulnerable to stressed environmental conditions. High mercury levels can reduce egg viability. The loss of mangroves, a primary nursery habitat, is a major threat to juvenile survival, as they usually stay there for 5 to 6 years before heading to deeper water. Goliaths can live to almost 40 years. The species was previously classified as critically endangered in 2011. There's been a complete moratorium on fishing it in the continental U.S. waters since 1990 and U.S. Caribbean waters since 1993. Unfortunately, in March of 2023, Florida Fish and Wildlife began issuing permits through a lottery system, allowing the fishing of up to 200 juvenile Goliath grouper per year, including 50 from the Everglades National Park. In Cuba, it is illegal unless you have an environmental license. This was one of the best dives of the excursion. We headed back up to the reef and to our friends waiting at the ladders. Our second dive was called the Intermedio. We again rounded the channel to the east and dove just before we got to the first cut in the key. Due to the severe morning rains and it being heavily overcast, I knew the viz was going to be poor. We dropped into 25 feet of water and headed down alongside the reef wall that flattened out around 60 to 65 feet. I again tried to capture sponges and coral. This was the first dive I saw 0 sharks. None. We again found a shallow cave along the underside of the reef. Oddly, I saw my first lionfish not on the end of a spear pole. This moray was a bit shy. Do check out my full video on the coral health of the Jardines de la Reina. I will leave it to you to judge for yourselves. Eggs sunny side up, anyone? As I've mentioned, I love purple vase sponges. So it was distressing to see so many broken and laying in the channel due to the previous night's severe weather. Halfway through the dive, I switched to the 360 camera. Here is a quick hyperlapse of the rest of the dive. The one disappointment with this dive is that I didn't see any schooling fish until the very end of the dive. Our third dive of the day was called Boca Anclitas, or Mouth of the Anchor, referring to its location in directly front of the first easterly cut in Cayo Anclitas. Visibility wasn't much better. The reef top was pretty shallow, 20 feet. We headed down the reef to 50 feet of water along the sand. There was a small standalone reef with a swim through. In it was a nurse shark. I knew what was going to happen. I tried to get around to the other side to catch a shot before the divers ahead of me spooked it. Too late. The reef structure and its condition was similar to the second dive. I felt bad disturbing this grouper snoozing in a sponge. Forrest's brother was hanging out too. I saw more of what I believe to be algae. Again, if you know what it is, please contact me. This dive too was a bit of a disappointment. Again, no large schools of fish, and after almost a week of diving and my concern about the reef's health, personally, it was taking its toll. Again, you be the judge. Clearly the dive of the day, if not the week, was the first dive with the Goliath Grouper. That saved the day. Unfortunately, the winds picked up again and the fourth dive of the day was ultimately canceled.
Sounds a little bouncy.
The last segment on diving the Jardines will be out shortly. I hope you've enjoyed these so far. And as always, my friend, until the next time, go explore, get wet,